Good evening. I'm going to open the meeting now. Roll call shows that all councilors are present except for Chair Cindy Maynard. I will be playing the role of Cindy Maynard tonight. Item number 2 is actually election of council chairperson. So as folks may or may not know, every year we elect a council chair, and that person serves as sort of the voice of council, the public face of council for certain matters, and also kind of keeps order during these meetings. So I will take nominations now for council chair.
I would like to nominate our present chair, Cindy Maynard, to continue on for another year. I have it on good authority that she's willing to serve.
Any other nominations? All right. Shall we vote? All those in favor of Cindy Maynard? Oh, nope. Oh, did anyone second? Sorry. I'm new at this. Forgive me.
Do we need to second the nomination? Mm-hmm. Second.
All in favor? Passes unanimously.
Kind of mean to do it when she's not here.
I know, right? You're stuck with it, Cindy. What can we get away with? Well, the cat's away. Item number 3, agenda review. Would anyone like to make any amendments to the agenda tonight? Perhaps add some things, move to add some things to the agenda.
I move to add the 2 orders, Order 19-43 and Order 19-44.
You're pulling them from consent.
Pulling them from consent. Thanks, Coach.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. All right, moving along. Approval of the minutes of March 11th, 2019 and March 18th, 2019. I'll take a motion.
Move approval.
Any comments or corrections? Wonderful job as always, Nancy. All in favor of accepting the minutes? Passes unanimously. All right, moving on to public hearings. Public hearing A, to consider a special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment for Woodman's Brewing Company, LLC, doing business as Orono Brewing Company, 61 Margin Street.
Good evening, folks. My name is Dave Mylan. I'm the Director of Community Development, and I'm here to report to you that staff has reviewed the application, completed the inspections, confirms that sewer fees and personal property taxes are current, and recommends approval of the license.
Thank you, Dave. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against the issuing of this license?
Good evening. I'm Abe Firth from Orono Brewing Company, and I'd just love to answer any questions that you have about what we're talking about today.
Bless you.
Great. All right, thanks.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against the issuing of this license? All right, hearing none, I will close public hearing A. Moving on to public hearing B, to consider a Class 11 restaurant lounge malt spiritus and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and vitulers license for Woodman's LLC, doing business as Woodman's Bar and Grill, 31 Main Street.
Excuse me. Again, staff has reviewed the application, has completed all the inspections, and is recommending approval of the license.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak for or against the issuing of this license?
Here again to just say thanks for having us in town for 14 years now, I think. It's been a lot of fun, and we're excited to have another year here. So any questions you have about what's going on at Woodman's, happy to answer those, and just here to help any way I can.
Anyone wish to grill Abe? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comment or? All right, hearing none, I will close public hearing B. Public hearing C, to consider a Class 1 malt spiritus and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and vitulers license to Wardwell LLC, doing business as the Family Dog, 6 Mill Street.
Staff has received the application, completed inspections, and recommends approval of the license. And applicants are here as well tonight.
Does anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? No? Okay. Hearing none, I will close public hearing C. On to public hearing D, to consider the town's application for funding through the Office of Economic and Community Development for a Community Enterprise Grant Program Business Facade Grant. Eligible activities include approved exterior improvements to the building owned by Byers Manufacturing located at 74 Mill Street.
Madam Chair, if I may begin, I've got a brief overview of what the program is, if that would help for those present and as well as those at home. The town of Orono has been asked to apply for a Community Development Block Grant, or a CDBG grant, on behalf of a local business. The Byers Manufacturing Building is located at 74 Mill Street, is a 150-year-old manufacturing building in need of a little of attention. It is located within a residential neighborhood of downtown Orono. The attached photo that you don't see shows its current condition. The town's comprehensive plan adopted in 2015 singled out this property as appropriate for special zoning to enable redevelopment for a new commercial use. CDBG facade grant funds would be used to replace windows and siding on 3 of the sides of the building that are visible from the street, i.e. the facade. The owner will be investing additionally in a new heating system and energy efficiency improvements as part of this project. The $25,000 grant would provide funding for 50% of the project, with the owner providing the other 50%. The CDBG program is funded by the U.S. Housing Urban Development, or HUD, agency, and administered locally by the state of Maine's Department of Economic and Community Development, DECD. I work with alphabet soup all day long. The goal of HUD funding is to eliminate slum and blighted conditions in America's downtowns. Part of the application process is to receive public comments on the application. A public hearing is scheduled today at the town council meeting in order to get input from the public on the project itself. We are interested in hearing your thoughts on the proposed project. You are encouraged to make a comment this evening, or if you have questions, you can contact me at my office, and I'd be happy to answer any of those questions regarding that. Jay Shields is the applicant and is also here this evening if you would like for him to answer any questions about this, this project. When the public hearing portion of this is concluded, part of the application requirements requires that anyone attending this meeting to sign in. So I'm asking folks to be able to, I'm passing this around. So even though you may be here for something else, we're asking you to just sign in for this as part of the application, for this process. And town manager has a comment.
I'm just going to speak a little bit to the facade grant. Many councilors might recall that several years ago we had community development CDBG facade improvement grant for downtown, and many different businesses participated at this point. What we're doing right now is a single building, single property application. So it is not one that will be piggybacked with others. And there are some strategic reasons for doing it that way. And I don't think the microphone's on. I wonder.
It is now.
All right. So this, unlike before, where the town put in a small amount of money for part of the administrative costs, that is not the case in this application. The grant funds would cover 50% of the costs. The owner would cover 50% of the costs, and everything over that, the the initial 25,000 that he has to put in for the
Correct.
project. Our wonderful economic development director has the certification to administer the program, so we will not use an outside consultant like we did last time.
Just a quick cherry on the top of that is the reasoning why we're using a spotlight designation versus a regional designation is that in order to, if you were to apply for it, like for the whole downtown, then you have to be able to demonstrate that 25% of that geographical area is slum or blighted. And frankly, we don't qualify. 25% of our downtown is not slum or blighted. So the only way that you can take advantage of a process like this is do what's called spotlight, is taking one property and dealing with it, singular.
Also, this is a highly competitive, I don't think.
Right. This is a highly competitive application. We're really, and so it's, we wish our best, and we've got pretty good success rates in the past for this, but it is, as Sophie said, it's a very highly competitive process. There'll be applications from all over the state of Maine.
And can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Did you say it has to be rezoned? Did you say something about rezoning?
No, what I was saying is that in the 2015 adopted comprehensive plan, we created special zones for special redevelopment zones that needed special rules specifically in order to redevelop or repurpose those properties. And this particular building, this lot was one of those that was singled out for that designation. Evan Rickard, our previous planner, did an excellent job of being able to pick 2 or 3 properties around the town that needed that special attention.
So would anyone from the public like to speak for or against the town making this application?
Good evening. I'm Jay Shields, owner at buyer and the subject property, and pleased to answer any questions you might have. I appreciate the effort that Dave's put into this, and we'll continue to work together with your approval and see if we can make it happen. It'd be a great thing for us, for sure.
I just comment, I think it's a great program and a very worthy property to focus on, and I'm pleased to see us making an attempt to get this kind of a grant. I do wonder, Jay, do you have any plans for the building other than what it's currently being used for?
No, not at this time. I'm 71 years old, but continue to enjoy what I'm doing.
Yep.
And so we'll continue that for the foreseeable future.
Great. Thank you.
So I do have a comment that was submitted in writing from a resident that I'm going to read into the record. This is from Daniel Lapointe of Kelly Road. He writes, community grant business facade is Orono considering tax mill rate needs reduction and pending increase property taxes from RSU 26. Mishandling public funds will further burden Orono taxpayers. Great harm. 50% in land trust lands is completely wrong, is without any fair compensation, Orono landowners and residents, to my knowledge and belief. Any further comments?
I have a question. This is actually for Dave. It's because whenever things come up that have a big picture, you're always able to help me.
Can I just ask you a question real quick, Lori?
Sure.
So we're going to be discussing this during new business. Is this something that
okay. This is not the time to
we
discuss.
could get in, just so we don't get into a longer conversation now during public hearing?
Okay,
Is that okay?
sure.
Okay, great. So we will be talking about this again later. Oh, we've got another comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I think this is a great use of public funds and that facade grants are super helpful. Other businesses have received those in Orono, and it's something that I hope that the town can do more of. I think that it's great that economic development is working on this stuff, and there's certainly more work to be done. So I am very in favor, as are other business owners that I've talked to.
All right, thank you, Abe. All right, if there's nothing further, I will close public hearing D.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So we will move on to acknowledgements by council members. And why don't we start with Sam?
Thank you, Megan. I'd like to acknowledge the tragic passing of Detective Campbell, who was killed on I-95 a few days ago. It was a great loss, and my sympathies, I'm sure all of ours, to his family and to the whole force. Also, in gratitude for what the police do, the event that happened 2 Wednesdays ago, or was it 1 Wednesday ago, up at the school, the misunderstanding that put our police force up there. It was too bad that the whole thing happened, but I think our force was impeccable in the way they handled it, and kudos to them and to all of our first responders. Also, would like to, of course, congratulate Orono Middle School and High School show choirs that won state championships 2 Saturdays ago down in Lawrence High School. Incredible performances, so hats off to them.
Lori.
I would just like to acknowledge that I attended a legislative breakfast on Saturday morning where local people in the greater Bangor area could talk about issues that were being proposed in the Maine state legislature. And one of our firefighters, Andrew Bragdon, was there and spoke about a particular piece of legislation. And I was just very impressed that the people who are our staff in the town of Orono are very involved in how issues of the legislature affect our community.
Tom?
I'd like to acknowledge the passing of 2 longtime Orono residents over the past month, and they are Richard Morrow and Wendell Tremblay. Both had lived here for 50 years or more and contributed greatly to our community.
Cheryl?
Yeah, I also want to acknowledge Orono Land Trust. They had their annual meeting last Friday, I think, and it was open to the public, and lots of people went, and they had food and a really nice presentation. And so they're movers and shakers, which is nice to see. And I also saw them again at Maine Coast Heritage Trust Conference in Topsom this Saturday. So Orono is represented across the state in many arenas. So I'd like to acknowledge them.
Terry?
I would like to acknowledge our University of Maine Lady Black Bears for the second year in a row making it to the NCAA tournament and actually competing quite well against NC State.
I would like to acknowledge the passing of Orono resident and member of the Historical Society, Eloise Riccardelli, last week at the age of 90. She was spirited and smart and funny. She led an incredibly interesting life. She traveled extensively from the time she was a child and all through her adult life, and lived in many different places around the globe. She worked for the Museum of Modern Art in New York and was an expert in her field and continued offering her expertise even after her retirement 30 years ago. She was a fixture around town at Tai Chi at the Keith Anderson Community House, at the Collins Center, watching opera, and movies with the grandkids, nights out around town at local restaurants. She was quite a fixture. And of course, in the Historical Society, she'll be sorely missed. Moving on to unfinished business. I don't believe we have any. And moving on to the consent agenda. So I'll take a motion to move the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Skipping ahead, multiple pages. All right, moving on to new business. So we're going to begin with Order 1943, which was added or pulled out of consent and added to new business. Order 1943, order revising the credit enhancement agreement between the town and James D. Sweat Living Trust dated 2/8/2016, Section 1D to reflect the 10-year term, April 1, 2014 to April 1, 2023, and Section 2B to reflect the term of agreement ending in FY 2024. I'll take a motion on the order as read.
Move approval?
Second?
Dave, Sophie, Dave?
I can't say more than you've already stated. This was just more of I call it a housekeeping correction, that the way that the Department of Economic and Community Development counts to 10 and how we count to 10 is a little different. So we've chosen to default to how they count to 10.
Is there any discussion on the matter? Yes.
I just want to clarify for folks without notes that the reason this got pulled off consent is because we needed to amend the original order to talk about the second piece. So that motion was to accept the order as read.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to Order 1944, order revising the credit enhancement agreement between the town and Star Properties dated 10/19/2015, Section 1D to reflect the 10-year term, April 1, 2014 to April 1, 2023, and Section 2B to reflect the term of agreement ending in FY 2024. I'll take a motion on the order as read.
Move approval?
Second?
Same.
Anything else?
Nothing new.
Ditto?
Ditto.
The state didn't catch this one, but we figured out that if we count differently, we should probably look at all of our agreements to clean them all up. So this is the only other one that we counted this way.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now where am I? Back to my skipping back and forth. Okay. Order 1949, order authorizing and directing the town manager to submit an application for, wait, did I skip something?
Nope. You're fine.
Okay, great. Sorry, so many pages to go through. I'll start again. Order 1949, order authorizing and directing the town manager to submit an application for funding through the Office of Economic and Community Development for a Community Enterprise Grant Program Business Facade Grant. Eligible activities include approved exterior improvements to the building owned by Byers Manufacturing located at 74 Mill Street. I will take a motion.
Move approval?
Second?
Dave?
Early on in my economic development career, a council member gave me a coffee mug that simply says, "Keep it brief," from a presentation that I had done 20 years ago. It still sits on my desk today. So I would say that everything I've already told you in the public hearing is the same that I would be talking about today, or at this moment. If you have any questions, I'm certainly prepared to do my best to answer them.
So the facade grants are for blighted properties.
Correct.
And before I was on the town council, there was a facade grant for many properties.
Correct.
So, and now our town, except for this property, perhaps is not considered blighted. So you're saying that before our town was considered blighted before the other upgrades?
One of I understand your point. The answer is that one of the reasons why many communities really are hesitant to apply for these funds, because the HUD requirement stipulates that in order to be able to apply for these funds, these particular areas, whether it's a region, a geographical region, or whether it's a single property, must be in a slum or blighted condition. If you're using a geographical area, then you have to be able to show that 25% of that geographical area is considered slum or blighted by HUD standards. That's a tough pill to swallow sometimes oftentimes with many municipalities. This would be the fourth application that I've participated in.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Dave wasn't here when we did the last
Correct.
grant. We ended up doing a lot of work behind the scenes with many different business owners for a long time. And we actually had to declare spot blight. So each of those parcels of business owners that wanted to participate had to agree that their property was spot blight. So council at that point was not in favor of declaring the village commercial district as slum and blighted. I would agree, I would hesitate to do that now. I think the piece for us is that this is a need that Jay came to us with. And it is why we have our economic development department, is to be able to try to recruit and retain the businesses that are here. So the issue that we had was, do we try to make this into a full-blown project like we had before? And quite honestly, the need is not as obvious as it was before, because we put a lot of money into downtown. And where Dave came to, and I totally support, is that we have a business that's ready to go right now with a considerable match, which makes this a stronger application, and that we should just move forward with one business, slum and blight. Jay's fine with us saying that. We can declare it on the property, and away we go.
Thank you.
What she said.
Thank you. Then there have been other ways in which we've been able to leverage financing, either state or federal, that has to do with only a certain percent would be eligible. So when we've gotten grants, you can't, to do some business enhancement, which we, for example, we did with the OBC, that there's only a finite amount of the percent of the town that can go, it can be covered under these kind of grants. So is there a finite number of facade grants that we could go for, dollars of facade grants we could go for?
You're limited to the $25,000 per property, whether you do it in any individual application as this is, or whether it's in an application for a regional area. And I would never disagree with my tremendously smart boss, but the only ways you can apply for them is either in a spotlight or geographically area. And I'm not, so it's either one application or half a dozen. So,
Okay.
so the answer is that you can apply for as many of those individually. They would be, unless you're doing a geographical area, then they would actually be competing against each other on a statewide basis. So this particular case, as Sophie did say so well, is that the reason why I really wanted to do this project was the property owner was prepared to invest in the property and had the financial ability to be able to do this. Because when we submit the application, when I submit the application before April 26th, I have to be able to sign a document saying that the match amount is already committed, and Jay is prepared to do that. So that's not every municipality, that every property owner that would be able to do that.
Right, that's great. And certainly there are things that are visible from the street that,
Right.
It'd be wonderful if he can be able to leverage the funds he has to invest
That's correct.
with this money to improve the way it looks from the street. That's great.
That doesn't mean that, and keep in mind, the only one thing I wanted to make sure that I clarified to you is that it's in the downtown area, so it would have to be within the village commercial district. So it's not anywhere in town. And it has to be for commercial use. It cannot be used for any properties that have a residential use.
Isn't this one block off the village commercial district?
No, it's within it. It's the last, it's actually in that special district all by itself. So it's.
Oh, okay.
inclusive
So when I
of-
look at the map and I see that end, that's
Right.
because it ends and then picks up again.
Correct.
I see. So, so it's still considered, it's a special spot that's connected to that other district.
That's correct. There's, I think, 3 of them in the downtown area has that special designation.
Okay, and the facade, I'm all for it, sounds really fabulous. Also, I'm all for energy efficiency, fabulous. However, I do not understand how energy efficiency upgrades fit with facades, because usually it's not on the outside.
Great question. The answer is that, and this is typically how when a property owner is having to match these funds, they can use those, the match funds can be used for anything within the building. It doesn't have to be part of the facade. So what I encourage people to do is when they're applying for funds like this is use your funds to make those other types of enhancements that you're trying to do, the efficiency. So as I mentioned earlier, that Jay would be upgrading his heating system. He can use the funds that it costs to put in a new furnace in a ginormous building like that. That's a technical term. That would allow him, he can use that as the match towards the facade. If he were to put in a new machine that made a bigger widget, he could use that funds to leverage those facade funds as well. But that's a great question. Good observation.
But just back to, there's not a finite number of facade grants. It's just that they have to be on places that meet this criteria.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
if we happen to be like some towns in New Jersey, for example, where we had blight everywhere,
Correct.
saying yes and supporting him wouldn't be that we were losing finite resources for someone else who hasn't asked yet.
Correct.
Okay.
We can every year this comes up once a year.
And my apologies to anyone from New Jersey.
this comes up as once a year. So we can apply if there was any year we can apply for the funds. The applications are due on April 26th. The scoring and the decision making, and as Sophie said, it's very, very competitive a grant process, and that we should know sometime in probably July or August whether we're successful in the application or not, and would hope that maybe as early as this fall that work could actually begin on it.
Sorry, one more. Facade is something that everybody sees. We, unlike Bangor, that has a historic preservation part that is related to its town office, we don't have that. I know there was a lot of discussion when I got onto the town council about what things look like when we changed or changed some of the description of what would happen on Main Street or what could happen on this Main Street. Are there any guidelines that this facade has to go by?
Yeah, I mean, you want to take it? This is, again, that's a great question. Part of this, once the project is tentatively approved by Department of Economic and Community Development, it goes into a conditional move forward phase. Part of that phase is the first hurdle that they have to jump is the whole project has to be approved by Maine Historic Preservation. And having been involved with this project for many years now, that oftentimes is a pretty big hurdle with a building that's either listed on the historic register or is eligible to be on the historical register. So in this case, we think we're okay with that. But the answer to your question is the whole project would be reviewed by Maine Historic Preservation to meet the federal, state, and federal guidelines. And they have, to be honest, they have complete veto power. If they decide that this has to be a single pane window for whatever reason, then that's what it has to be.
The town also has a downtown facade plan that we created as part of the initial CDBG application several years ago. That plan is intentionally a little vague. What it does instead is look at large items to try to create some consistency within the downtown to make it look like a district. The council has not adopted it as an ordinance, so we can't make people comply. However, when they're using funds, it's a joint project. We work together and we try to keep those large themes going so that it brings some unity to downtown.
But those actually great questions. I'm glad you brought them up.
So when this goes, it's a federal grant program.
Correct.
So when it goes through the federal grant process, is it going to be contingent on the state and federal historic
Yes. Again, they have to successfully sign off. Maine Historic Preservation is representing the federal government as well as state government in their review of this. It's called an environmental review, but it's not a, that's what it's called. But they have the ability to, they have to sign off on it saying that they've reviewed this process and it meets all of the criteria that Maine Historic Preservation utilizes for it. Frankly, their standards are a lot stricter than anything that, a municipality most municipalities will throw at you. So like I said, I've already talked to Jay about it. These are those ones that I get the most nervous about because, again, they have a very, very exquisite review of your project, and they won't sign off on it till they're ready to.
So, sorry to get in the weeds. So the historic preservation is 50 years. And so that asphalt siding on the side that's towards downtown, that's probably more than 50 years old. But so are you proposing something that looks different than that for the
Yes.
siding? And my guess is that if you don't replace the thing that's 50 years old, that you'd have to show something that would be in the spirit of what would have been there when the building was built, which is much older than 50 years.
That's only if the building were of, and again, don't take this the wrong way, if it was, Jay, that it was of historical significance. It's by National Historic Register guidelines. It has to be either on the register or be eligible to be on the register. We don't believe either of those happened in this particular building. So then if that's the case, then they will just look at the guidelines that Sophie has talked with you about, so that locally how we would look at if you're going to use these funds locally, here are the suggestions that we would like to have you use. So if you for whatever siding material that you choose, it'll be looked at and reviewed.
It's great. Thank you.
Well, great questions. Thank you very much. I'm sure that folks at home appreciate those kinds of questions as well.
Briefly, I just wanted to ask a point of clarification where we have an order that is authorizing the town manager to submit an application. I presume that were that application accepted, we would then have additional discussion and information at a later time.
So most of the time when we bring a grant idea to you, I ask for permission to apply for it and also permission to spend it if we get it. CDBG is a little bit different. This phase 2 process, there is a lot of external phase 2 that Dave will be working on, but there's also quite a bit of internal phase 2 that I'll be walking council through. And part of it is to gain an understanding of the specifics of the project. And the other part is to ensure that council understands all of the things we are committing to into the future. And most of those things are things that I think council would agree to, like we're not going to discriminate and we're going to be good employers and we're going to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, things like that. But this has multiple steps. So I did not want to put and we can spend it in until we jump that hurdle.
So if we're lucky, we'll hear about this again. Okay.
Correct. The process would be that in July or so, I would come back to here with an award saying that we had been awarded it, or at least to go to the next phase. And then you would, as Sophie said, you'd be taking action to vote to accept those funds.
There any further comment or any questions anyone else has? All right, then I will take a vote on Order 1949. All in favor? Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Order 1950, order authorizing the town manager to sign a lease agreement in substantially similar form to that presented with the Orono Paddlers Association to allow for the organization to construct and use a canoe and kayak storage facility on town-owned property at Brownies Park. Mitch?
So I don't have a coffee cup to tell me to be brief, but I will do my best.
Oh, I'm sorry. My parliamentarian reminded me that I did not take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mitch?
Okay. So we have gone to to committee a couple times about the idea of the Orono paddlers putting a boat storage facility up at Brownies Beach. I know that this has been over almost a year and a half now, so there may be some people that have moved in and out. But ultimately, it came twice to committee. The first time was to kind of understand the appetite for this sort of thing and how to move forward. The second time was after we had got some consultation from our lawyer about what the best way to do this would be. The paddlers came back and gave a presentation to our community development committee. In that process, if the idea behind this is a boat storage facility that is a post and beam roof and open, so it's not a closed facility. The paddlers we would lease the property to them, a portion of that property in which the boat storage facility was on. They would then be in charge of that facility, maintain it, build it, all that sort of thing would be under their watch based on the lease agreement.
And insure it.
Yeah, insured. And all of those things are in the lease agreement, and certainly we can discuss that as well. Along with this, part of the reason why staff felt it was important is because of the collaboration between the paddlers and the town, and specifically the Parks and Rec Department. As our comprehensive plan talked about is activity on the water. And that is an expertise that they have that we don't necessarily have. So the ability to have a group that can educate and put people safely on the water and work with groups and people to give them that experience is important for us. And it fills a void in which it's very difficult for our department, Parks and Rec Department, to do because we don't have that expertise. And that storage facility would allow them to not have to carry boats back and forth for their programming, especially with the kids, and to do that. I think at the end of the day, it's a great opportunity for us to keep providing the paddlers to keep providing programming that they're doing on the water to great success to this point, and keep collaborating with them to be able to offer that for our residents and also attracting people. I don't know if Jeff Owen is here. I'm sure he'd like to make a comment or two about it, and then.
Hi there. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm Jeff Owen, the president of Orono Paddlers, and I didn't find a single flaw with what Mitch was saying. The void he talked about with the town of Orono's ability to provide programming on the river is the void that we hope to be able to fill with our programming. And this structure at Brownies Park is a real key because if the boats are accessible, we believe the people will come if we structure the programs around it. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
How long is your lease for? What's going to be the?
So the lease that we provided you with a draft copy. This is a lease that annually renews automatically, and we have the ability either side to give 60 days notice of termination. The thought being, if we got into a situation where we were reviewing this lease every year and having to renew it, there could be some issues that come up if it expired, because part of this agreement is them holding us harmless and indemnifying us, which is really the big piece that we want to have in this. So it's structured in a way that if things aren't working out, we would try to resolve it. If we couldn't resolve it, then one of us would break the lease and they would have 60 days to put it back, the property back the way they found it. And if I could just clarify one thing, I'm sorry. In this arrangement, it is premised on the idea that in general, what the paddlers is doing, the paddlers are providing a public service and filling a void that the town would like to have filled. But the underlying premise is that they remain an independent nonprofit organization, and the town is allowing them to be on town property, but we will not gain any control over what they do. And that's really important for the indemnification and the liability side as well. Our expectations, we would continue to collaborate. Jeff's been a great partner, and we would want to continue that.
As a riverside property owner, I think this is a great idea, very supportive of it. I'm interested in what your timetable is, Jeff. Is this work you hope to get done this spring?
This spring, I think, is unlikely. We, as an organization, we've decided not to pursue fundraising until we received approval from the town. So we have a design for the structure. We are poised and salivating to begin fundraising. And we think we'll be able to do that efficiently. But I think we might be able to see construction by the fall.
Other questions or comments? All right. Okay, well, then I will take a vote on Order 1950. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Order 1951, order authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement to provide emergency medical services to the town of Veazey for the period July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2022. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Chief Lowe.
Councilors, Jeff Lowe, Fire Chief. I recently went down to Veazey at the request of the town manager, discussed with them the options for continuing emergency medical service delivery down there. Currently, the system, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a tiered system where they provide first responder service, and then we provide the ambulance transportation for medical emergencies in the community. The billing structure as it stands right now is we bill for all ambulance transports that we make out of the town of Veazey, and any run that we respond to in Veazey, whether it's a transport or not, that's EMS related, not fire related. We currently bill $200. After some discussions with the town manager and the representatives of the fire department down there, we negotiated a small increase in that this year. They have agreed to $225, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if I were to apply it to 2018's numbers, it would equate to about a $4,000 increase in revenue coming into the town of Orono for providing that service. So I looked at the contract. It's a very good contract. I think it provides a fair level of service. We're able to meet those service demands and still continue to provide service to the town of Orono without any negative effects that I've seen so far. So my recommendation is certainly that we continue on with that partnership. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the duration that we had talked about. I think it was 3 years.
3 years. This is a 3-year contract, and I think the place that we negotiated, which is why that run per call fee isn't as high as you may have expected, is we negotiated council's right to terminate the contract because of financial constraints. So what we've done is given council an awful lot of power in this relationship, and that comes at a cost.
That was the exact thing I was going to ask you about or bring up. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Kind of a continuation of what we've been doing, but just a little bit better. All right, I'll take a vote on Order 1951. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Stay right there. Order 1952. Order authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with Maine Fire Protection Systems of Bangor at a cost not to exceed $16,040 for the emergency repair of the public safety building sprinkler system, with said expense funded through a reallocation of $15,000 originally approved in the FY19 capital facilities budget for painting the town office, with the remaining expense taken from the approved FY19 facilities operating budget. I'll take a motion.
So second.
There we go.
So sprinkler systems are life safety devices, and they're put into certain buildings, especially buildings like we have next door that are public buildings and have the ability to house people overnight. Part of the sprinkler system maintenance are standard checks, which are done quarterly, annually, and every 5 years. The quarterly checks are basically inspections where the sprinkler company, whoever we contract with, comes in and looks at some very fundamental things, sprinkler connections, couplings along the pipeline, gauges. They make sure alarms trip properly and ring into the correct locations, those types of things. The annual inspections are a little more detailed. They get into like sprinkler hangers, a more advanced search for leaking, flow testing, and those types of things. The 5-year exam, which we just went through, is a very detailed process where they actually open up the system and they look inside to see if there's any corrosion or buildup or those types of things. And unfortunately, what we found during this 5-year examination was that we do, in fact, have enough of the buildup in the system that it needs to be flushed. Otherwise, the system isn't going to be maintainable. It'll have to come out of service. Taking the system out of service isn't an option. It's actually a law. And delaying the repair of the system puts us really in a bad position, especially when we're trying to encourage others in the community to either install or maintain their sprinkler systems by law. So for us to say do and then not do ourselves probably isn't the best thing for us to do. So that's why this has come forward. We're kind of in a hard spot here where we need to maintain the system. And this is the most affordable option after shopping around, I think, that we've been able to find. And that's why it's here before you tonight at that price.
So I could speak to how we would pay for it, because this is essentially $15,000 that we hadn't budgeted for. Council did approve a town office painting project that has not yet begun. There are some things in the town office exterior that have to be addressed. However, talking with our facilities staff, we think we can do some of that in-house and get paint in places that paint needs to be and fix boards that need to be fixed, enough to get us through for another year or two. Our thought at this point is it makes much more sense to allocate those funds for this repair, and then shuffle the town office painting project in with the other priorities for the upcoming budget.
Questions, comments? All right. I will take a vote on order 1952. All in favor?
Yep.
Passes unanimously. All right, moving right along. Thank you, Chief Lowe. Order 1953, order authorizing the town manager to sign a recycling services agreement with Coastal Resources of Maine LLC for the processing of collected recycling material for a period of up to 6 years. I'll take a motion.
Moved.
Second.
All right, Sophie?
So Rob Yerxa informed me that tag I'm it. So here we go. As council has worked through this transition around solid waste in the community that has been underway, we've dealt with trash disposal. The other element that we have currently, we have a curbside recycling, single sort recycling program with curbside collection for residential properties, and a real hope that commercial properties will find their own manner to recycle as well. As we moved into this transition period, what was very important as we thought about the future was to try to get a reliable, stable disposal mechanism for recycling that also our commercial entities could sign on to. So right now, we are continuing to collect single sort recycling, and we are just processing it through the Casella recycling program at $140 a ton. That is a week to week. We give a week's notice and we can step out of that agreement. Our hope is by signing with Coastal, we'll be able to take advantage of our joinder agreement for trash, under which It will cost $35 a ton to dispose of recycled material at Coastal. There's also, if the town adopts a mechanism to track the commercial entities that would want to dispose of their single sort at $35 a ton, under our agreement, much like we do with trash, we can do that, which would be our intent, to get it together so that commercial entities that will follow the rules will be able to utilize this processing method as well. The thing that with trash, there aren't a lot of changes as we move through a change in disposal mechanism methods. The public shouldn't see much of a change. With recycling, they are going to see a change. And that change has less to do with this particular processing plant and more to do with a huge shift in the global market that everybody is just held steady with because they know we're in the middle of a transition and we don't want to transition twice. So Rob and the university, there's a group of university students working on understanding what that change is going to be and how to get the word out to the public.
Yeah, Belle and I are working with a group of sustainability students that are working on a couple different approaches, some printed materials and working with Coastal. Coastal had some sort of canned outreach information that we were able to start with, but working with the team of students to really make it far more specific to our community, to make sure that we get as much information out there to all the residents that will be affected as we can. There'll be also some website and Facebook hosted things that we can get out there as well. The process of transitioning from the Casella zero sort system to the single stream collection at Coastal will probably be over the next 2 to 3 months. Coastal, while they're looking for communities to begin the transition, won't be completely strict with the recycling rules until July sometime, depending on how their process starts. But I've been to the facility a couple times in the last few weeks working with Coastal staff to get that information, get what we need to communicate to the public out there. I think some of the biggest changes will be in what is acceptable. Most of the stuff that you think of as recycling is still going to be recyclable, cardboard, magazines, newspaper, those kinds of things. But some things that you probably are recycling today, you won't be able to once we fully transition to the Coastal facility. The big ones like Sophie talked about are glass jars, plastics 3 through 7. So right now all plastics are accepted. However, the 3 through 7s will not be. So a lot of those things, and there's also a lot of cleanliness. So contamination is an important issue. So the greasy pizza box that gets accepted today as recycling won't in July and August. So it'll be important for us to get all that information out to the community so that we can deliver the cleanest recycling products that we can.
And just to clarify, when you say accepted, for folks who weren't at the committee meeting where we discussed this last, what that means is we will be paying the rate for trash,
Yes.
not for recycling.
How it would work logistically is the truck collects the zero sort single stream collection. They'll back into the facility and dump it on the tipping floor, and there'll be Coastal staff there inspecting the loads, and they'll determine if it's not what type of waste it is. If we're presenting it as recyclable materials and they're too contaminated to meet their standards, then it gets shifted over into the trash, the MSW side, and we pay full price for it as opposed to the 50% rate for recycled materials.
So there won't be inspectors out on the curb saying, well, we won't take this bin of recycling. So people would then see it in the budget.
That's right. Yeah.
Excuse me, it would be the whole truckload of material that would be shifted over,
Correct.
not just the
That's
items that-
usually
Yeah,
5 or 6 tons of recycled material. A truck weighs about 5 or 6 tons when they dump,
Yeah.
so pretty expensive.
And is this going to be part of the public, when you go into the public, it's going to be part of the education that if they're going to be doing
Yes, there'll
this,
be budget
then-
implications. We'll talk about that
So
in
that's
our
going to, yeah, so that's
educational
going to take the
information.
community to act on this. I have a question, or maybe you could clarify for people who don't know the difference, and I could use a little bit more clarification too, the difference between single stream and zero sort.
Okay, so zero sort, want me to take it? So zero sort is a trademarked name that
Okay.
Casella gave to their process.
Mhm.
The single stream or single sort is kind of an industry description for that type of collection. But zero sort was a trademarked
Okay.
process, I guess you would call it, that Casella has.
And if I could just clarify, because not often do you see orders that say, sign a contract for up to 6 years. This is a 2-year contract. We're locked in for 2 years. If we're not happy, 90 days before the expiration of the agreement, we would notify them in writing and the agreement would expire. If everything is fine and that written notification isn't sent, then it renews for 2 more years with that same 2 years. And the piece is that they can also send us notification. So we are guaranteed 2 years. After that, we would have to be in conversation.
Can I ask you a question too, Sophie? With this, I mean, I know you know that this is a baby of mine. With this contract and with the how can I say this? It's not Fiberite anymore. They've changed their name, right?
So Fiberite still exists, but it's a
Okay.
Maryland company. So Coastal, as part of the agreement, Fiberite has to own a portion of Coastal. There has to be a certain percentage that Fiberite maintains to ensure that we have the R&D and technical resources.
Right.
But Coastal is their main company that's running this facility in Hampden.
Okay. And is Coastal a new company? Has it just started? I mean,
Yes.
I guess
Yes.
the question that I'm leading to is the management issue, and that Fiberite has been notoriously behind schedule. Are you confident that this new company, that this new management that's coming in there can keep us on track?
So I would say that with every construction project that I've been involved with,
Mhm.
you lag. I mean, I have not yet seen one that comes in when they absolutely expect it. Over the last 6 months, I have become probably too intimately acquainted with the construction in Hampden. And I see a company that's working really hard to bring this in. I see a company that didn't kind of drop their pennies to bring in a well-known, highly regarded operator. So Fiberite isn't operating this facility. They have another party that does the operations, just like PERC. The PERC partners didn't run PERC. It was a secondary operating company that did that.
Right.
When we look at the manager that they've brought on, Scott, I don't remember his last name, Scott, knows his stuff. And I've been really, I went through a period where I had kind of, I've come back up. I'm really excited about this. I think it will be a good project. However, I would caution people that anytime you're dealing with mechanical operations at this scale starting, it's not going to be perfect. We are going to have problems. And when you look at a biological process like the anaerobic digestion.
Mhm.
I just know how long it took our wastewater treatment plant to dial in their process, and how even now we go back and forth to fine tune, and every once in a while it drops out and we've got to work it back. This is not a perfect situation, but I think what we have is the ability, we've got a good partner that wants to work with us, and we have the ability to adapt to the needs of the region, which we really didn't have before. We had a solution. Now I think we have an adaptable solution.
Okay. And if we do go through this process, I mean, sign this application and agree to the terms of the contract, as a municipality, if we opt out after a year and 3 months or whatever, that 90 day, we have to give them 90 days notice, right?
Yeah, year and 9 months.
Okay, year and 9 months. Okay. What are our options?
So my guess is that Casella Zero Sort will probably still be around at the market, which won't likely be $35 a ton unless there's a massive shift in the market in very quick order. I'm not sure that there will be options, but I also know right now the only options are Casella Zero Sort and Fiberite. The EcoMaine is another option.
We could consolidate and haul to EcoMaine, but they're at an extreme
It would
cost.
be it would be a lot. Yeah, it's very expensive. So we're limited now. PERC doesn't do any recycling.
Thank you, Sophie.
Other questions, comments, discussion? All right, then I will, don't go anywhere, Rob. I will take a vote on order 1953. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Order 1954, order authorizing the town manager to purchase a Ferris ZRS Z2 stand-up zero-turn mower from Whittemore and Sons of Skowhegan at a price not to exceed $7,050 with funds drawn from the approved FY19 cemetery budget. I'll take a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Rob?
Yeah, so as we have built the fiscal year 2020 budget, one of the important changes that we've made at Public Works and for maintaining the cemetery is that Public Works staff will be taking over the responsibilities for grounds maintenance at Riverside Cemetery. In order to do that, we need to upgrade our mowing stock a little bit and get a little bit more equipment. And we had talked in committee about taking what was left of the spring. So unfortunately, summer doesn't work on the fiscal year plan. So the end of the fiscal year 19 had funds left in it to help pay for the 2019 maintenance contract. We're proposing to use those funds to help pay for some of some equipment for mowing that we'll need to upgrade so that we can keep up with all the work that we'll have this summer. The largest purchase in that, along with some leaf blowers, push mowers, some smaller hand equipment, is the need for another tractor. This tractor is a zero-turn mower, but you kind of, instead of sitting on it, you stand on the back of it. Very nimble. So thinking about mowing in and around all those different obstacles at the cemetery, trees and stones and things like that, this piece of equipment is pretty much optimal for that. There's a bunch of different brands out there. We price them out using 3 different vendors. And the lowest was the Ferris ZR2 Z2. So we had a demo model brought over to the garage, and we've tested it out and we were pretty impressed with it. So I would note that we also have another Ferris zero turn that we bought a couple years ago that we've been really impressed with. So I'm recommending that we move forward with this purchase.
Comments, questions? Rob's got a very good track record with gadgets. So I have faith in your
How about that?
discernment here.
Except for that holder a few years ago. But.
I didn't buy that one.
We won't, yes, he's not responsible for that one. Might be older than he was. All right, I'll take a vote on order 1954. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Order 1955, order adopting a this is also you, Rob. Order adopting a formal public works mailbox replacement policy. I'll take a motion.
Move approval?
Second.
Rob, Sophie, Rob.
You want me to go? Okay. State law is very clear that when mailboxes are placed in the right of way and they're damaged by snow plowing activities, the municipality or the state government that has caused those damages is not responsible for repairs or replacement of mailboxes. Over the years, the town, however, has, when possible, helped out residents with temporary mailboxes or a quick repair, splice up a post, whatever we need to do, because I recognize that's an incredible inconvenience to wake up in the morning and see that your mailbox is in the ditch. Usually it's for a good reason, but we tend to like to help out residents whenever we can with these kinds of things. In recent years, we've noticed that people are spending a lot of money on their mailboxes these days. You can put a piece of granite out there with wrought iron supports and all these sorts of things, which is kind of a departure from the classic 4x4 post with a black mailbox on top.
And they may not be aware that it's in the right of way.
Correct. Not necessarily knowing the whole scope of what really they're putting out there at risk. What happens is I've been struggling with having to say no sometimes to some repairs. It's not a very common thing. We probably fix 6 or 8 over the course of an entire winter. But to try to I felt like we needed some structure to how we handled those repairs to make it fair for everybody and to protect the town from having to replace. If somebody wanted to put $1,000 mailbox out there, they could. And if we hit it, I wouldn't want the town to have to come up with $1,000 to repair that mailbox, if that makes that's an extreme case, but if that makes any sense. So what we proposed is basically to either have public works employees go out and fix mailboxes to the residents' satisfaction, or allow for the homeowner to fix it on their own at their own expense and be reimbursed a standard amount for a mailbox and a post. So if somebody wanted to replace their mailbox with a $250 mailbox, it's up to them. They can do that. The town's going to only support $50 of that, or whatever the fee is that you guys set at fee schedule time. What we're proposing right now in this first proposal would be $25 for a mailbox and $25 for a post, which is a standard state-provided black box with a post. Yeah, so that's it.
And my understanding, if I remember correctly from the committee meeting, is that there could be an assessment of whether it is one or both things. So
yeah, sometimes the mailbox may be damaged, but the post is fine. So we just go ahead and screw a new mailbox on the existing post. Or if the resident wanted to do that themselves, we reimburse them up to $25 for the mailbox.
The homeowner's insurance doesn't cover that? Up like a homeowner's policy, insurance policy?
I don't think so. But your deductible, you wouldn't even cover your deductible. What would cost? Yeah.
Rob, is it fair to say that the majority of mailboxes in the town are actually in the right of way?
Yes.
I think it's absolutely incredible that we only have to deal with 6 or 7 a year.
Yeah,
That speaks well for our drivers.
Yeah, and one thing that we will do, and we'll also, there are mailboxes that work great for us, and there are mailboxes that just plain don't. And so, making your mailbox visible, don't hide it behind a shrub or a bush or things like that. But hanging mailboxes with the post sort of cantilevered further away from the road often survive a little bit better than ones that are mounted on a solid post right on the edge. So when we post this policy, we'll post this on our website on its own page so that people have a resource to go to. We're also going to provide some information about the kind of mailboxes we would prefer and provide some graphics and things like that on how to build them.
Any other questions, comments? All right, then I will take a vote on Order 1955. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
All right, on to council, committee, and representative reports. Why don't we hear from Sam first?
On March 28th, the Community Development Committee met. We had a few issues. We had a presentation from some humane students looking at the commercial use of plastic bags and polystyrene, looking at the various possible ways that we could perhaps form some kind of ban or fee structure. That is an ongoing concern, an ongoing process. That study's happening, so that will be continuing. We had some fairly decent turnout for that. We had a few local business people and some people that were very interested in this. So that was a great thing. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the next issue, which was considering certain classification, regulating the residency for certain classification of convicted sex offenders in town. What the state would allow us to do, any municipality, is create perhaps a 750-foot buffer around any sort of school area or an area designated primarily used by children. That would only limit the residents, where such an individual would be able to reside. They can still go wherever they want. It's not really a thing that's going to prevent them from going certain areas. But it's very interesting. We're a little bit mixed on this. Where are we with this, Sophie? This is something that we are continuing to chew on, but we had both sides of this issue. That sounds wrong.
Yeah.
Just like go ahead.
So where I think we are is the committee had a couple of questions for me to take back to the attorney. We were going to come back for some more discussion, and council committee was going to see what they wanted to do with this, but we were going to do a little bit more due diligence. Mm-hmm. And also you wanted me to try to find some sample ordinances.
Yes.
And the church thing, that's part of the question.
Part of the whole question, yeah. So, but it was a great discussion, very thorough on that whole issue, and I'm sure it will continue. The last thing we talked about was something we already dealt with earlier today, the James Sweat Living Trust Credit Enhancement Agreement, which already came up. So, and that's what we had.
All right, Tom?
Finance Committee met on March 19th at 8 a.m. and I participated by phone. Several of the items that we discussed have been taken up this evening. So we discussed the purchase of equipment to maintain the cemetery, and we have taken action on that item. We discussed the necessity of some repairs to our landfill. The cover in some areas needs to be repaired, and we talked about how that's going to happen and where the money is going to come from, which is in a reserve account that we have for maintaining our landfill. We talked about the change in recycling, which we've taken action on tonight. We talked about the mailbox replacement policy, which we've taken action on. And we talked about renewal of the contract to provide emergency services to VZ, which we've taken action on. And we reviewed our financial statement. I think that's it.
I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by how much you accomplished in your committee. I just want to make sure
good
people know
committee.
that we do great work. Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to clarify. Thank you.
All right, everyone settle down. So the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee hasn't met since our last meeting here, so I have nothing to report there. We will meet again May 6th, which is Monday, May 6th, 6 p.m. So if you're interested in things such as unruly gathering ordinances, then come on by. We'd love to have you. The Orono Historical Society met on April 3rd. For some reason in my notes, I marked that as 2016, so I'm traveling through time apparently in my notes. The first thing that they discussed was inactive members. They have membership rolls with lots of people on them who didn't pay dues this year or haven't paid for a few years, so they're not sure whether these folks are still involved. And I just want to, as a public service announcement, it's only $10, and you don't have to come to the meetings if you can't make it at 1 p.m. on the first Wednesday of every month. So if you just wanted to even do it as a charitable donation, you could certainly do that. It's for a very good cause. And if that's you on that roster that hasn't paid your dues yet, pay your dues. And they also discussed a generous donation that was left to them in the will of Dwight Demerit. So that will go to good use. I gave them an update about sort of what's been going on at the Keith Anderson Community House. The assessment of that building is ongoing, and they were happy to hear about that. We also discussed sort of preliminary planning for a rededication ceremony for the Civil War monument over at the cemetery. So I basically asked them kind of what they would like to see, and they had some suggestions for me. So we're gonna take that back and work on it. We also discussed the spaghetti supper that will be happening at the Elks Hall in Old Town on April 24th. It's being put on by the Old Town and Orono senior citizens. It is $2, and before the supper or during the supper, there'll be a presentation about the history of the VZ Railroad. That sounds very interesting. And come on, $2 for a spaghetti supper. And as I was told by Marlene, it will be real spaghetti and real sauce. I asked, as opposed to what? She said, stuff in cans. So it's going to be real spaghetti and real sauce. Apparently that's a big deal, and it's only $2. If you are interested in coming to the next meeting of the Historical Society in May, it's actually going to be a field trip to the Hamden Historical Society. We would like to go over to Hamden and find out how they managed to take in $500,000 worth of donations for a new wing. Can they teach us their secrets is what we would like to know. So if you too would like to know the secrets of how they do such great fundraising, or just to see the Hamden Historical Society, which is wonderful, then please do consider coming the first Wednesday in May at 1 p.m. And that is all I have for that. All right, and there are no other reports? No, okay. All right, future agenda items of concern. I'll start this time on this end with Terry. Concerns?
Not at this time. This is actually my first full council meeting, so I'm taking in a lot of information and seeing how the processes work. So I'm sure next time I will.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Tom?
My ongoing question, how is our audit coming in? Are we going to see that information soon?
The answer is I have draft financials, which is what I want to review with you on Friday. So it is planned as a topic at the Finance Committee meeting. You should have your drafts.
Great.
Your bound ones by then.
Excellent.
Lori?
I guess this is somewhere between items, agenda, acknowledgements, items of concern. I didn't mention at the acknowledgements that we had a workshop where we heard from a local solar installer, where we got general information about what the possibilities are for solar, municipal solar. And it was a lot of information taken, like many a scientist I know, quite into the weeds, wonky. But there was lots learned, and I guess so. I mentioned that just to let the public know that we're learning about that. Before we would do anything, we would need to understand it. And so that's the first step. And I would just, as far as agenda items, it wasn't discussed at that workshop what the next step is, since it wasn't in a committee. So I guess I just wanted to find out where, or make a point of information that I'd like to know what the next steps are.
So at that workshop, the first next step was that counselors were going to get me questions that needed to be answered for Chuck. Not Chuck, wrong vendor. For
that vendor.
For that vendor. And it would come back, Kurt Penny, there we go. And then it would come back up likely after the budget process. But as of yet, I have not received any questions or direction from the council. We did agree that it wouldn't go to committee, that it would stay in workshop because it was a very big item and felt like everybody needed to be on the same page and get the information.
Thanks for that reminder.
Sam?
Nothing.
I also have nothing. All right, public petitions, I don't believe we have any. Public comment. Susan?
Hello, Susan Whitmore. I'll start with the not so wonderful news, though. A word of condolences to Wentworth University, who over the weekend lost a member of the student body. And I'm just very familiar with the fatality. I'm not sure if they've determined the cause of death of the student, though it occurred within a neighborhood I was a resident of when I attended academics in Boston. And it's a very violent neighborhood as well. So reading the report kind of was one of those ones that hit to former home to myself. Though on the more positive note of things, congratulations, Ms. Gardner, your new position in council.
Oh, no, I'm just filling in.
You're just filling in? Okay.
No, this is temporary.
Oh, okay. Well, and also I want to say condolences to the loss of your friend as well. And I want to welcome Terry Gardner, or no, Grenier.
Grenier.
Welcome to council.
Thank you.
If I may, my name is, again, Dave Mylan. I'm the Director of Community Development. I just wanted to make a clarification on an earlier presentation. It appears that I was spending time with the chair back in 2016 because as I was made aware that when I was talking about the CDBG grant application, I mentioned that the project was, the grant application was going to be up to $25,000. And in fact, it's up to $50,000. So it doesn't change anything for action that you made tonight, but I wanted to clarify that I had given you one number and I had it written down in my notes. I just wasn't paying attention to my notes. So I made my correction. Thank you.
I have 4 brief announcements. The first is I hope council will join me in recognizing our town clerk, Shelley Crosby, who received a designation as a Master Municipal Clerk by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks, which is pretty darn incredible. There aren't very many in the country, and she works so hard for this. So that is my first. My second is that when I got back to the office after a day off-site at meetings, I got to open a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers. Evan Rickard has worked tirelessly with us to guide us through the vernal pools analysis and adoption of a special area management plan. And what I opened was the final signature page with the Army Corps' approval. I have to sign it, and then I send it to the DEP, and we will officially have a special area management plan, which is pretty incredible. Third, it was really neat to hear council commending our public works guys and the manner in which they plow and the fact that they don't take out all the mailboxes in the right of way. I would like to just take a moment to recognize the fact that the Public Works Department has been through a lot this winter. We've had injuries, we've had illness, we've had people going to different jobs, and through it all, I think they've done an amazing job. And it is in no large part, no small part, no small part, due to the leadership in the department. And Rob Yerxa has just done an amazing job for us and deserves a little bit of recognition. And finally, since we talk about how wonderful we are, we should talk about money next, right? The budget process is underway. Final staff review is happening in the next 2 weeks. Before I leave on my vacation, I will drop the budget documents for you guys to review. And then I'm running out. I'm not just leaving town, I'm leaving the country. The budget workshops are mostly on Mondays and Thursdays, and they start at 6 o'clock. It is Ramadan. We're moving into Ramadan. So we will end our meetings pursuant to council wishes. We will end our meetings a few minutes before sunset so that people who wish to observe Ramadan will be able to do that and not miss our exciting budget workshops. But I would encourage people, we will put the documents up on the website before the workshops begin, and I would encourage people to participate.
I have another comment to read into the record from Dan LaPointe, Kelly Road. This is regarding the municipal elections that happened on March 12th. And Dan writes the following: total voters did not equal 10% registered voters. Articles 1 through 8 need appear at next elections and so on until at least 10% registered voters attend and vote at polls. This is reference, petition, remonstrance per Maine state constitution. I believe this very wrong and harms Orono greatly. And then I would also like to make a reminder announcement for anyone who's interested in attending the RSU Council Joint Workshop on Tuesday, the 23rd, and that will be 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. So we do try to get together at least once before the budget commences, the RSU and board and the council to discuss the budget and other issues. So we will be discussing the FY20 budget and also the school buildings project at that meeting. So please do come by. That's April 23rd. It's a Tuesday, 5 to 7 p.m. All right. So at this point, let's see. I have so many notes in front of me. Right. So at this point, the next item on the agenda is an executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056D to allow the council to receive an update on collective bargaining negotiations with IAFF 3106 and Maine Association of Police Orono Unit. It is my understanding that this may result in council then exiting the executive session afterwards and voting to ratify the Maine Association of Police Orono agreement. So we will be going into executive session away from the public. When we come back, we will be voting on an order. The public has every right to observe that process, but just to let people know that that would be the next step. So if folks wanted to stick around and watch that, they could, but we will be adjourning to another place for the discussion. Now yes?
Oh, no, I just didn't know if you were.
I was about to ask, as I read Order 1956. Oh, no, that's later. Can I take a motion from someone to move into executive session?
I would enjoy moving into executive session.
Would anyone enjoy seconding that?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? We will be moving into executive session. Thank you very much.
How much time should we have? How much time for executive session?
I'm praying for about 3 minutes.
20 minutes? 20.